Pans and Pioneers. Today I'm going to be showing you the way I like to make homemade tamales. And I was taught how to make tamales by my former mother-in-law, who made them every single year. And her method was different from mine because she used a traditional way where they actually cook the head of the animal. And I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use a pork roast today. You could use chicken, you could use lamb, you could use bison, you could use pork, you could use beef. I would recommend that you not use ground beef for tamales just because of the texture of the meat that you need to hold the tamale together. So this is the pork version of but I'm going to make pork and chicken, but I'm going to do the exact same thing with the chicken. I've got a crock pot that's preheated here, and as I've preheated on high, I'm going to cook this probably 10 or 11 hours. I'm going to make sure that the pork is completely cooked down so that it's very easy to shred. And so anyway, let's get going. So what we're going to do is we're going to add our pork. And I've got the pork cubed up pretty large chunks just so it's able to fit in the crock pot. If you have a crock pot that's mammoth, that's huge, and you can put a pork roast in it, perfect. But I didn't know if all of this was going to fit in the crock pot, so this is 8 to 10 pounds of pork, shoulder, and I've also got the pork butt portion of the pork in here as well. So Beverly, you need to try tamales with your all the pigs that you and Howie decided to chop up and put in your freezer. This is an excellent recipe. You can can tamales, you can freeze tamales, and they make great meals. Okay, I'm gonna put all the meat in the crock pot. You could brown this and sear it off first, but it's not necessary at all. I remember her always putting her meat in a big stock pot. Well, it's usually the head of the animal. She would boil it, and so this is my version. I don't necessarily like the consistency or the taste of boiled meat, so I'm doing it this way. Hopefully this is all going to fit. Okay. And this is no bone in this one at all. And hopefully we can get some water in here too. If not, I'm going to put some of this aside and cook it with potatoes and carrots, and we'll eat it for another meal. I think that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so I'm just going to fit as much as I can into the crock pot. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put spices in here, and I'm going to put the recipe on the blog at potspanspioneers.com, and the blog will be in the description box down there. I'm going to use some spices now while it's cooking because these are the flavors that I really want to get saturated into the meat. And then once the meat is actually done, I season it again. So I don't want to confuse you and think that this is all there is. Okay, I'm salting just with kosher salt. And I'm going to take 2 heaping tablespoons of garlic. And this is minced garlic that I did myself. It's organic. And I'm going to take an onion, and I'm just going to slice it through. And this onion is going to cook down to where you can't even not only taste it, but you're not going to be able to see it. So, put that in. And then the next thing we're going to add is I'm going to drop a bay leaf in there, and I'll have to fish it out because you don't want to digest the bay leaf. It's real important that you don't. And I'm going to take a handful of, this is a Mexican oregano. And I highly recommend that you get the Mexican oregano just because it has a distinct flavor that does really well in tamales. But if you're living out on a homestead and all you have is regular oregano, I just maybe cut back on it. Maybe only do a half a tablespoon or so of it. And the next thing we're going to add is an ancho chili. And ancho chilies are not necessarily spicy. I've actually taken mine and soaked it in some water. And this water's turned a little brown, but the chili has been roasted and dried, dehydrated, and I'm just rehydrating it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop that chili right on top. I better make sure most of the seeds are out of it, right? Because the seeds are what's really the spiciest part of a chili. Any pepper. Get most of those out. Again, we're going to cook this so long that you're not going to be able to recognize the vegetables. Okay, and then the last and final ingredient is going to be cumin. Now, cumin is a spice that's in most every Mexican dish you'll ever eat. It is one of the main spices of every single dish that they pretty much cook. So I'm going to sprinkle mine, but I know this is going to be about 3 tablespoons. And it's a lot, but it really flavors and makes the tamale. So. Okay. Now I'm going to pour a quart of water and try to get it over the top of this and let it kind of seep down in there, because we're going to want this to make sure and be covered and cook all night. All that seasoning to get down in there. Pardon our dog. She barks at strangers. Okay, I'm going to let this cook. Get the lid on it. And we're going to let this lid stay on it, and we're going to cook this again for 8 to 10, maybe even 11 hours. I'm going to check it. So, and I'm going to leave it on high for the first probably 2 hours, and then I'm going to cut it down to a medium high for the rest of the time that it's cooking. Pork you want to always get at a certain temperature of heat, because if you don't get it up to a certain temperature, it can be very harmful for you. So you want to make sure and, do your highest temperature at that point. Okay, when we come back, the next phase of the video will be after the pork is cooked, and I'll show you how I season that up.